Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Lioness community event for February. We're just going to let folks come in and get settled. If this was an in-person event, let's give everybody a moment to find their seats and sit down and get ready to soak up the knowledge. Though we've got a lot of people who have RSVP'd for this event. And I do want to reassure you, yes, it's being recorded, and yes, you will have access to the recording for later on. So, all the learning that's fit to, I guess, record. So, again, let's just let folks come in and get settled in. And while we're waiting for everybody to get settled, I just want to let you know that we will have the opportunity to ask questions. So if you've got a question or a comment at any time, drop it into the Q&A function if you want us to answer that question, or if you want to drop anything into the chat, go right ahead. So we are going to get started. And welcome everybody to the Lioness Community Events. Hi, my name is Bobby Carlton. I'm the editor-in-chief, publisher of Lioness Magazine. I'm also the founder of Innovation Women, which is an online speaking platform, and also where we get our awesome guests for the Lioness educational webinars. We also are going to be celebrating, like everybody is going to be celebrating International Women's Day with more Lioness networking. And that is going to be Tuesday, March 5th. And that is going to be at noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. So we hope you'll register. The link to that is in the chat. So we will absolutely be looking forward to seeing you all there. And today, I would love to introduce to you Lioness Magazine community event. Our session today is negotiation skills for powerful outcomes, and we are featuring Heather Meeker Green. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and give Heather an opportunity to get set up with her slides. After 30 years of experience in the world of negotiation, influence, conflict resolution, communications, emotional intelligence, and personal effectiveness, Heather Meeker Green has facilitated, mediated, and trained a variety of public and private sector audiences, including most recently at Stanford University. She has delivered speaking engagements for Innovation Women and at national and regional conferences such as Influencing Without Authority at Macquarie. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
Macquarie sounds very French. Women's Infrastructure Network, getting great agreements internally at the ATD Valley of the Sun Ignite Conference, and successful conversations turning the tide, connecting the dots at the Northeast Regional PMI Project Management Institute Association meeting. And we have her here today. Heather, thank you so much for joining us. You are up. Take it away. I know everyone's very excited for this.
Wonderful. I am so delighted to be here today. This is a topic that is clearly a passion of mine, and I love to be able to share it with everyone and to help enhance and think about your negotiation skills. It is one of those things that I think a lot of people don't necessarily proactively work on. Folks often think I'm decent at it, or I need work on it, or I'm getting really good at it because of things in my work life or whatever. But this is an opportunity to actually consciously think about how you negotiate. What are some of the best skills and practices? And so what we're going to cover today is why, first and foremost, why are negotiation skills important? It's really good to see some of the reasonings why it would be helpful and good and valuable to improve, enhance, increase your skills. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about some negotiation approaches, what they look like and give a recommendation based on the research. We'll hit all 4 key elements for negotiating effectively today, so you can walk away with some good ideas, skills, and then finally end with some best practices in a negotiation checklist for your powerful outcomes. What I'd love to do first, though, is let's just take a poll. I always love to get a temperature of what is going on for you and how do you feel about your own negotiation skills as you join today. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how well do you feel that you negotiate? 10 being extremely effectively and 1 being extremely ineffectively. So give us a sense of what you feel is your negotiation skill level right now in this moment. And we'll give it another minute or 2 to let everybody pick a number, and that'll give me a good sense of where are people's heads at today based on what you've got going on. And then we'll get. Now, here's the other beauty that in all of the work I do with clients and others, negotiation skills, to me, it's a lifelong journey. It's not necessarily something you can do after a class, after a book. It's something that you can work on, especially with practice and using the tools and resources. It's how you enhance and get better at it. And I've been doing it for a really long time and still find I'm learning things all along the way. So this is the chance. It's like having a coach, right? If you're in a top level as a sports person, you're likely going to have a coach who's going to teach you how to do things a little bit better. So those that already come with a lot of skill, my goal is walk away with something new to think about, add to your repertoire. And for those who feel like they are not at the level they'd like to be, hopefully having a structure, having an approach and a way to think about it will accelerate where you go. So why don't we share the results and see where we're at with these. All right, it's looking like, as expected, there's a greater bulk right sort of in the middle there, but as I just explained, everybody can learn. So let's move on to talk a little bit about why are negotiation skills important at this moment. Okay, so obvious one, very commonsensical. It'll help you get better outcomes. It'll help you with your own personal gains. We all have things that we are trying to achieve. And so in this particular case, as you enhance your skills, you will increase and improve what you're getting out of your negotiations. There's some interesting statistics around that. Just I thought I'd throw a few out there for you. First of all, I don't know if you know this, I know I'm speaking hopefully to a pretty large group of women in there, although I'm imagining it's a mixed group of folks, but 70% of women don't negotiate their salary. So this is one of those things where I'm trying to be an advocate for, giving some tools and skills so everybody can be negotiating. Now that number also is tied to a statistic of preparation. So I'd love to share that for those who have prepared. One statistic shows that 26.67%, almost 27% of folks get higher performances when they've walked in with strategic preparedness. So again, advocating for not only enhancing your skills, but thinking about how you prepare and what do you plan. That's going to increase your outcomes personally. One last one, that 80% or more of outcomes are achieved in the pre-negotiation phase. So that means, again, that systematic preparation can support achieving the outcomes you want. I'll throw actually one more. 78% of negotiators with training, with some kind of skill building, are satisfied with their outcomes. So again, if you want to make sure that you are happy with what you're achieving, get some training. And I'm so glad you're here today to do that. There's unfortunately sometimes a negative thought about negotiation. I know when I first thought about negotiation, and many years ago when I joined a negotiation consulting and training firm as one of my first jobs out of college, I was afraid of it. It's something that caused a little bit of fear. And so that can be a challenge. In fact, apparently, women compare negotiation to going to the dentist, while men compare going to a baseball game. So this is a chance to get over that fear and have a little bit of ideas for how to do it. A couple of other spots where negotiation skills are important. I can show you on the next slide some organizational results. So if you're part of an organization, you're going to see better results if your teams, if your people have enhanced negotiation skills. Obviously, confidence building. It's kind of a chicken and egg, right? If you're feeling not very confident about negotiating, then that can be a challenge. But the more you practice, the more you try in low risk ways and take on even small negotiations using some of the tips, best practices, and tools, that actually builds your confidence. And the more you are confident, you're going to aim closer to that rate of 78% of negotiators with training are satisfied with their outcomes, right? We're trying to achieve that. And last but not least, negotiation skills are a way to balance some of the current inequalities. As many of you probably have heard, there are some statistics around women, people of color, any kind of marginalized groups, and the way that negotiation outcomes affect or impact their achievement of success. So I think that's the last way that we'll share a little bit about why they're important. So let's take a look statistically in terms of organizations. So you can see on the screen, when you don't have a negotiation process, companies actually, when they look at in particular their sales negotiations, will not achieve the kind of net income that they are looking for. And the more formal of a process that they have, or at least bring in training so that people are starting to use a particular approach more consistently, they start to increase their net income as an organization. And you can see the bottom stat there that says there's a pretty big jump once you actually have a formal process, 42.5% increase. So there is obviously some hard evidence for why you might want to, as an organization, look at even these skills. Here's a couple of more ideas. So many folks think that technical skills are critical, and while they are these days, the long-term job success depends on people skills, of which this is one. It's a communication approach, negotiating. So again, these are some reasons why you might want to enhance. Again, on the salary side of things, I already mentioned the 70% of women. Underneath that, you'll see 66% of employees who tried to negotiate initial salaries reported success. So there is statistics out there, and actually you see the second bullet there, employers have the money set aside. So again, for anybody who has never negotiated their salary, it's always important to give it a go. So these are all the reasons why. This last one, again, to try to curb the inequalities. As you can see, there are some great disparities around different groups and the kind of earnings they have. And so one of the ways that we can actually balance those inequalities is to continue to negotiate better. Sadly, this has only changed about 2% in 2 decades. So I think we can keep accelerating it if we start putting our skills into practice. Let's do it. All right, let's talk a little bit about what negotiation is. So many folks think about negotiation as the transaction, right? It's the substance of what you're negotiating. It's what you're trying to agree on. And, you know, that is a very important aspect. Obviously, it's what you're going to measure your success on in terms of, did I get the outcome I want? Am I, you know, reaching the goals that I need to? This, however, is not quite broad enough for us in the negotiation world, because you are also in the midst of the negotiating around process and the relationship. Those are also important aspects that you want to enhance or move toward. You need to think about who the parties are, what kind of relationship you have to start, and hopefully you are negotiating in a way using an approach that will enhance, strengthen, and maybe even create long-term relationships. Those, again, are going to be better off for you, unless you're doing a single time haggle over something that you know, are not going to be necessarily doing ever again, buying something in a foreign country or wherever it is. But no, you want to think about in your negotiations, what is the relationship and what do I want it to be? And how do I bring myself so that I can actually get to that outcome? And then the third leg of this, or a third aspect of negotiation, is the process, right? How am I negotiating? How have we decided to have the conversation? Do we know that there's a whole aspect of negotiation that starts before we're actually talking at the table? All the preparation I'm doing, all the preparation that the other party might be doing. How are we going to um, treat the time that we have together? What are we going to do during that conversation? What agenda are we setting? All of that is important in the process. Do we, need to take a time out or a moment when things, start to feel a little bit tense or heated? All of those things are part of the process. So when we're thinking about negotiation, we want to think about all three legs of this stool. Now, in order to talk about negotiation, I want to make sure we're all on the same page about what negotiation is, right? There's a broad definition. It's anytime you're trying to reach agreement, which we do every day, often during the day. And it could be with anybody. A lot of folks think of negotiation as more formal. I've got a contract and terms, and, I'm trying to get, something happening at work that, will need to get to some special agreement around, but really it's anything. It could be getting your child out to the school bus. It could be figuring out family dinner. It could be anything. The other idea is that negotiations are these complex, big things. And of course, we see them as very simple at times, a simple transaction. However, the tools I'm going to share today, we have used and I've used with groups that are huge, that have multi-year, multi-party, multi-million dollar deals that they're trying to do. So they can be used very sophisticatedly and in complex situations, but they also can be used in very simple transactions. I like the idea of this quote from Roger Fisher, who wrote the best-selling book, Getting to Yes. He was one of my mentors. I worked in his first consulting firm in Cambridge, and he came out of Harvard Law School and started a think tank there and really pushed the envelope on what people were thinking about when it came to negotiation, more formalizing it into interest-based or principled negotiation. And I like the idea of what he's talking about, not only because of the fact that it is happening all the time, but it really is a combination of trying to be influential and persuasive, as well as being able to see and understand, more than just my own view, other people's interests and what is important to them, because we're both working on each other when we're negotiating. All right, so if we understand what negotiation is, let's talk a little bit about the approaches to negotiation. I think when people do think about negotiation, a lot of times they're thinking about this form of negotiation, right? A more adversarial orientation. It's one in which it's very much sort of self-focused on what is important to me and what I'm trying to get out of it. I'm stuck on this sort of position level, which means I'm just demanding something, or maybe they're demanding it of me. It could be they're using this approach on you. But either way, it's a party that's really focused on what do I want and how am I going to get it? It may be that I've already walked in with the mindset that this person is an opponent. They're somebody who I need to fight against to get what I need. And, I'm going to have this sort of zero-sum game happening where I'm not going to get what I want unless they don't get what they want. And, in other words, there's only so much of a pie, and I need to claim as much as possible. And sometimes with this adversarial orientation, the people and the problem get mixed up, right? They start looking at the people as the problem. And that, again, is a way to unfortunately add unneeded tension into a negotiation or a conversation. It's one in which I'm holding on to all kinds of information. I'm probably not putting the relationship as important, or I'm, not really focused on it or thinking about it. It's very sort of short term, it's transactional. And in some cases, I'm more likely to use negative leverage, leverage being the way I might try to persuade or advance what I want in a negotiation. I'm probably going to use the stick, as they call it, as opposed to a carrot, right? To get somebody to say or do something that I want. So if this is what you've experienced, if this is what you've had others coming to you, or if somehow you've kind of gotten into habits that you might have pulled in with your own mindset around things, it's a good opportunity today to take a look and think, is there a different approach? Is there a different way? And so I'm here to say yes. The collaborative orientation, this is one of my favorite pictures. I don't know if you have such clever pets, but the collaborative orientation is one in which you're actually focused on the whole negotiation as just a joint problem-solving opportunity, right? We both have needs and interests that we're trying to satisfy. Can we do it together? How can we do it together? How can we make sure that we're getting the most out of it? And do I know what is important to me first and foremost, really truly understand what is my needs and interests? And do I really understand yours? Can I understand what's going on for you that has you saying what you are saying in the negotiation? It's more about the relationship and building it through listening, asking questions, understanding, sharing information, bringing in data. It's about bringing in lots of possibilities, not just here's my demand and what I want, and otherwise I'm walking. It's much more about how do we solve this? How do we get this done? It's about using objective criteria, meaning what is a standard or a benchmark or a precedent or something that we can rely on, so it's not just this is what I want, this is what you want, and we're just going to argue over it. It's much more about what's fair, what's persuasive. What would a third party say? Hey, this is, makes sense as the right solution or the right option that you're deciding on. And it's much more a long-term view. It's much more looking at, gosh, if we ever had to negotiate again, are we leaving this one in such good a place that we could easily come together next time and do it? So the idea again being, if we can focus more on the collaborative, it's going to, impact the value that gets created. And so we talked already about the substance value, the relationship value. Both of those are really important for how you're going to approach your negotiations. And then you can add in the third, the process being, what are we going to do in terms of our meetings and the table and how we're, handling and designing our time together. So picking and thinking carefully ahead of time about your approach is really important. So our recommendation, again, the research says negotiators will get more optimal results more consistently when you use a collaborative approach. The idea being you want to get the best results you can, and you want to do it more consistently, because that is the way that you both enhance your personal outcomes. If you're part of an organization, your organizational outcomes, and you are building that confidence. I'm going to tell just a brief story that I think will hopefully enlighten, some of the ideas around why a collaborative approach might make sense and bring in all of the things that we've talked about so far. So we did work at one point with an organization that provided blood supply products to healthcare centers, hospitals, etc. And right before we were brought in to work with a number of teams of their sales representatives, the company had told them that they were going to have a price increase. They were going to double, actually. It was something pretty far-fetched in terms of, having to approach all of your current customers and clients and say, guess what? You have to pay double next time that we come to you with our supplies for your needed health centers and hospitals. And so they were in a kind of minor panic when we started to work with them. When we went through this process and we helped them understand all the various facets of it, how you might prepare, how you might think about things, how you might put yourself into the shoes of the other party, what happened, and one particular representative shared a whole story afterwards about how she just went and changed the process, right? She knew the transaction was going to be challenging. She knew that she was going to have some unhappy clients if she had just walked in and said, guess what? You have to, pay us almost twice as much now. Um, here's what we're going to do. She said, that's going to scare them away. That's probably a big problem. So let's change the process. And she actually took one of the books that, we've used before for explaining the approach and the 4 key elements. She handed it to all of her clients. She said, this is how we're going to talk about it. They had a big brainstorming meeting. They really delved into what was important to them. What were the key interests around the agreement that they were trying to do on both sides? What were they trying to accomplish? And then they talked about all the possibilities. So they came up with something like 75 different interests for all the parties in 9 different categories. They brought the teams together. So they had all the people at the table that were important for it. And then they looked at almost 100 different solutions and ways they could do it and package it and narrowed it to meet the key interests so it could be the most value added for both parties. And they were able to actually walk away with a deal that was strengthened, right? It had all kinds of value add aspects to it, education and, bringing in consultants when needed and training and different things that, weren't necessarily just part of the pricing agreement that they might have had before. So for them, changing the process, looking carefully, making sure the people were involved that needed to, made all the difference in the world for how they came out with their outcome. So as we look at the different kinds of approaches and think about, okay, how can we be more collaborative? How can we be interest-based or principled? These are all names for the type of approach that we're talking about. Let's take a quick look first at the characteristics of effective negotiators. So, as you might have guessed, this shift over from being, oh gosh, we just have to claim and grab what we came for, to let's focus on problem solving. Let's focus on what we can do together. That's a key characteristic of an effective negotiator. Being able to sit in the other party's shoes, that can make a huge difference. We used to do an exercise with folks that would have them literally in the other side's shoes. And sometimes the light bulbs would go off on, oh, now I get why they're saying no to me. Now I get why they're not able to do what I've been asking them to do all this time, because they can actually see it. And then they can shift and craft into a different result, a different option or solution. That still maintains what is important to you, the person, proposing, but that actually they can say yes to. So the idea is, how can we get to more yesable agreements? Effective listening, right? If we don't understand really what's going on for someone, if we're thinking about what we're going to say next while they're talking and answering a question of ours, any of those types of behaviors are going to minimize the opportunity that we will have. Information is power in negotiation. Information is critical for actually coming up with the kinds of hopefully innovative and creative solutions that actually will meet both parties' interests satisfactorily or even exceed them. Being influential is really also helpful and important. The more you can think about how to be influential or persuasive and utilize a lot of your own skills in those areas, as well as the tools that I'm going to teach you that will help you be a little more influential, that's great if you can bring those in. Planning, preparing. If there's one thing you walk away with, and it's, again, I forget now where it is, but the sad statistic about the number of folks who actually don't prepare for negotiations, it is going to be make the deals better if you actually take a few minutes and just use these 4 key elements to think about before you walk into a negotiation. That's going to make all the difference in you being able to get where you want to go. And last but not least, I've tried to cultivate this. Curiosity is really important. Thinking about what, on the spur of the moment is coming to my mind. Do I have a question? Just that might really, using my intuition to see what is, going to be helpful for me to uncover, to discover from the other party, or even to think about from myself. If they've posed a good question to me, taking the time to be curious is a way to add depth and information to the conversation, as well as, for me, it's helped me get over my fear of negotiating, because I'm really just like treating it as, wow, this is a really curious conversation. So I'm just learning things, as opposed to, oh my gosh, I've got to like quickly say this thing and nail this down and get this result. So those are the key characteristics. Let's talk a little bit about the key elements. So there's 4 key elements in negotiation that we suggest are really helpful and important when you're trying to negotiate the best outcome, the most powerful outcomes. The first one that we take a look at is around interests. And interests are all of the needs, all of the motivators, all of the concerns, anything that any of the parties are bringing into the negotiation. They are subjective. It could be, me needing to make a deal to show my boss that I'm capable of doing my job. It could be, we absolutely need to hit a certain number at this time of the year. It could be, I really want to make sure that we have a great reputation and that some of our new ideas are going to be marketed well. I mean, it could be, there's a grand scope of many things, but the important thing is really to think about what is important to me. Why am I negotiating this? What am I going to get out of this? It's not the solution. It's not the option. It's not the, you know, proposal that I'm putting on the table. This is really underneath. Why? Why am I proposing this? What is that getting me or my company or my team? So these are really important. And I have my own. Every other party has their own. Some of them are personal. Some of them are organizational. There's all kinds of ways to think about interest. And every party has them. And there are times in which some of ours overlap, right? We're both attempting to do something that we both have an interest around. And then there are some that are just different, right? They have interests that are not the same as mine. And every so often we feel like we have interests that might be in tension or in conflict. And those are ones we'll want to have more discussion around and work on. The second thing is, and the key really is to get underneath those positions, right? So positions are just the demands. They're what people come to the table and they say, this is what I want. This is what I'm trying to get done. This is what I need. And you really need to get underneath that. You need to ask the why questions, or how would that support you or help you, or what would that do for you, or what difference would that make? These are all the kinds of questions you could use to get underneath whatever demand or single proposal or option is there. Because what you want to uncover is all the other interests that they have, so that you can actually craft the most creative and satisfactory solution or option. So options, again, are all the parts of the proposal. They're all the pieces of the agreement. They're everything that you might be able to say yes to, right? So you're working toward what is going to meet my needs the best. This package of options, this is the area that I think is going to get us both the farthest. I'll give you an example of the kind of value of having differing interest and how it can impact an option in a positive way, right? So we're always trying to find an option that we can both say yes to. And if it means one of us doesn't give anything up and the other one gains something, that sort of trading or getting some value where it's not going to impact or hurt a party, that's a really great way to move the negotiation along, right? So I had a client once, and as often I will ask when I work with my clients, I have to understand what is their sort of fiscal year and all their policy. We were trying to come to agreement for work we were doing in October of a year. Often I am wanting to be paid at a certain point in the client project. And in this case, it would have been in October. However, I was learned through some discovery and some good questioning that their fiscal year started in November, therefore their new budget started in November, and they were really hoping to use the new budget for the work that we were doing together. So I was easily able to craft an agreement with them that said, that is not a problem. We can arrange to have the payment happen November 1st. It still met my interest. It fell in quarter 4. It was when I wanted to, make sure that the work was happening. But for them, it made all the difference to switch from an October date to a November date. So again, simple solution, wouldn't have discovered it if I didn't ask some questions about why they were being so insistent on what was going on. And it was easily solvable. So that's an example of options and how you might optimize options with the other party and how you might find ways to get to a good agreement with them without giving up a lot on your side. Obviously, if you are going to, you try to trade value for value. You don't want to be in a state in which they're always asking for something and you're saying, oh, yeah, sure, I can do that. I can do that. And then not getting something on the other side. That's just a good practice. But in general, if you can meet a need that doesn't hurt you, that's wonderful. Let's look at the third one, criteria. Now, these are all of the objective standards. They're all of the benchmarks, precedents, policies. They're all of the ways in which we can filter the options. We can look at the options and say, that's a fair deal, or that's persuasive, or boy, if I brought that back to my boss, they could see why, yes is good on this deal because it matches the criteria. It is held to an objective standard that we understand that is, a fair and persuasive standard. So for example, a very simple one in a house buying scenario, right? You're not going to just say, I want $1 million for my house. If your house is only worth $500,000, somebody's going to come to you with comps from the neighborhood of what recently sold and compare to your size house and, the quality and all of that. And that will tell you what the actual ranges for what would be a fair price. Now, it's not going to give you the exact one. Often you're dealing in ranges or you're dealing in different types of criteria to help you understand what would be fair. But it's important to think about those, to think about ahead of time, no matter what your negotiation is, whether we're working with a pharma company and they're, trying to work with the FDA on getting something passed to, whether it's a team that's trying to figure out how to ensure they have the resources to get their project done. The criteria can be used regardless of whether you're dealing with a quantitative or a qualitative transaction. It's just really important to think about because you want to be able to be fair and persuasive and have it fall within a realm. I've often told this story. It's one of my favorites. I was working with a client team. We were doing an actual negotiation workshop. They had a break. We had just gone over these 4 elements. They said, oh, this is perfect timing. We have a call with a client. They absolutely needed to give us an answer today or to try to come to final agreement over a sale that they were making. And they came back after the break and they said, you won't believe it. I got on the phone with the client. We thought we were all ready for them to just say yes to what we had been agreeing to and, where things were at. They were coming back from talking internally and they threw out this number that just didn't make sense. And they were trying to get us to change the price. And after you just taught us the very simple question when you're looking at, an option that's thrown on the table, the very simple question I taught them was, where does that number come from? You want that number to come from some objective criteria. Oh, the market standards, or oh, this index shows that this is going to be the range in which that particular product pricing would fall, or anything that can be objective. That's what you want. You want to have it be understandable. So when they asked their customer, where does that number come from? And the customer coughed and didn't have an answer, it meant that they had kind of pulled what they thought was a little negotiation tactic or a trick that they could try to up their, number and walk away with more, but it didn't have any legs. It didn't have anything to stand on. And they came back and announced to us that they were able to hold their customer and client to the same deal that they had before, and that they were really excited. So there's some power in criteria. There's some power in the ability to, you know, prove or show that whatever it is that you're negotiating around is a legitimate and a fair way of looking at it. All right, the last and not least, of course, but is our key elements is no agreement alternatives. Now, in the dictionary, options and alternatives mean the same thing. But in my world of negotiation, at least how we treat it, they mean two very different things. Options are the things I'm doing with the party on the table, the things we're trying to say yes to or come to agreement on. If I can't come to agreement with that party at the table, no agreement alternatives are the things that I am going to turn to. They are where I'm going to walk to meet all of my interests. I still have my interests if I can't get to yes with this person. I still need to do something to meet my needs. But if I can't do it with that person or that party or those multiple parties, whoever they are, I need to figure out how I'm going to do it somewhere else. And that is my no agreement alternatives. So for example, if I'm trying to go back to that house buying, right? If I can't buy the house that I wanted down the street, one no agreement alternative is to buy a different kind of house. Now, to think more broadly and creatively, another no agreement alternative might be to rent somewhere. Maybe I want to travel and live, in hotels for a month. Maybe I want to stay with relatives. Maybe, so here's all the ways that we think about our no agreement alternatives. They're all the ways I would meet my need of having housing or having a place to sleep. But again, we're trying to think of them broadly so that we can figure out how do they meet my needs best. Now, of those no agreement alternatives, there's usually one that is the best. So you'll see down at the bottom of your screen, this little acronym called BATNA. It is the best alternative to negotiated agreement. It's out there in the world. Again, Roger coined it. It's, you'll hear people talking about their BATNA, but that is usually the best one, the one that they think is going to be most satisfactory, short of coming to agreement with the person at the table. Obviously, your goal is that's probably even more satisfactory if you can make it happen. But if you can't, you need somewhere to go. Now, interestingly, I just was looking online. I always love to add to my stories and repertoires. And I just read a wonderful story about Taylor Swift, who actually exercised her BATNA in her recent tour with the movie, right? So she crafted this movie because she wanted to be able to meet the interest of her fans, to have more people be able to see her, because her tour was already sold out, and it was obviously very expensive for a lot of people. So she crafted the movie of her tour as a way to do that. Now, she had been in negotiations with Hollywood studios, different studios, to try to figure out how to get it out there. And whatever deals they were putting out to her, it was just not as satisfactory for what she was trying to achieve. It wasn't meeting all the interest as well as she had hoped, both for herself, but also for all the other interests around distribution and, meeting with the fans' interests and, all of it. Interestingly, what the family realized is they were able to go to their BATNA, which was actually to directly work with AMC and the theaters directly. And they were able to craft an agreement that was more satisfactory, met more of the interests, and was able to, from a financial distribution, be better all around. And it met the needs of having her fans be able to get to the show at the theater. Even the AMC, it said in the article, talked about how they had expanded the number of weeks that they would allow the movie there, all the different things that normally they might do. They, realized the opportunity and found a way to make it work. So she was able to actually get more from her BATNA than to go the other route, at least at where the studios had been negotiating with her. So that's important to know. If there's a place you can go that you can actually get a better deal than what you're doing at the table, then for sure you want to go away from the table. All right, so I've talked a lot about all of these key elements in negotiation. I'm going to move to one sort of final concept again, just to reiterate. As you're negotiating, when you're thinking about all the different options on the table, what you want to do is make sure you have expanded the negotiation pie before you start cutting it, right? So inevitably, at the end of a negotiation, you need to figure out how we're, claiming things, who's getting what, how we're breaking this up, what is our agreement with each other. But if you are going to actually maximize your negotiations, if you want to have better and more powerful outcomes, do your best to do all of the expanding prior to getting to that cutting it phase. And definitely do your best, try to not shrink the pie. That is only going to make it a lot harder to come to agreement, and you'll both not feel satisfied. Nobody wants a lose-lose outcome, or the sensation or the feeling or perspective that, oh, we both didn't do very well. And there is no fixed pie. Really, there are so many creative ways that people can think about it if they take a little extra time. Now, sometimes time is urgent, time is of the essence, and you can't get to do all of the back and forth and all of the thinking, right? Sometimes you are in a place in which you have to do your best with what you have. But if you have the time, and if you can plan and prepare ahead of time for your negotiation, you might actually be able to do a lot more of this expanding the pie. I'll leave you with one final story here. It was brought to light. It's probably one you've heard, and so apologies to those who've heard it before. But it's a very simple one, and it really solidified my understanding of what it means to expand the pie and to think creatively around options and to really understand the interest underneath it. And it's the story of the orange. It's the story of a parent with two children, and the two children come and say, I want the orange. No, I want the orange. There's one orange left. And most parents and many people on earth would simply, to be fair, say, let's just cut the orange. Here you go. Here's your half. Here's your half. You'll have to be satisfied with half an orange. That's what it is. But this particular parent had the opportunity and the wherewithal to say, let me just make sure I understand before I just enact a result that I think is going to be a good result and make an assumption about things. And turned to one child and said, why do you want the orange? What are you going to do? And one child said, I want to eat the orange. Okay, makes sense. When asking the second child, why do you want the orange? What are you going to do? The second child said, I want to use the peel to bake. Well, as you can imagine, that changed the scope of what was possible. And so a very simple solution was one got all the pulp and one got all the peel. And then they were both a lot happier, right? Didn't have to bake half a cake and didn't have to only eat half an orange. So I use that again, just as hopefully a good visual for how you might think about negotiation so that you can just really think as high target wise, broadly, creatively, and really think about the interests underneath and why they're important to know. So last couple slides, and then we'll turn it over to questions. I look like there's some floating out there. Hopefully we'll get some more. So I'll leave you with this. So where is your focus, right? You want to think about, are you trying to create or claim value? If you start off right off the bat in that distributive bargaining side of things, the claiming value side of things, you're going to quickly sort of zero sum the negotiation. So again, our suggestion is start on the integrative bargaining side of things. Look for the interest, try to create the value, try to expand the pie and look for joint gains, because our dilemma whenever we're negotiating is, how do we be sufficiently cooperative or collaborative, maximizing value, creating that rich negotiation while also making sure we are sufficiently competitive to claim and ensure we get a fair piece. We want to make sure we're getting it. All right, the last two I promised you. Here's your checklist. These are all the actions that you want to take and do as you're negotiating. The key ones: use some of these collaborative strengths, listen, develop interests, ask questions, think about your relationship, be curious. You want to prepare. These are all the things that you can do to prepare. They entail the 4 key elements: making sure you understand the interests, know what's important, finding different options and solutions. You want to make sure you understand what the standards are, the criteria. You want it to be fair, and make sure, what are you going to do if you can't say yes? And then sometimes it's great to practice and treat it as a joint problem solving opportunity. Bring the mindset, bring the attitude that this is going to be fun. This is going to be interesting. I'm going to learn some things. We're going to find some great solutions together. And then make sure you're doing all 3 of the legs of negotiation as you're negotiating. I'll leave this as the final slide. These are some of the lessons I've learned. I'd love to open it up to questions. I know we're about 10 minutes in now. Bobby, tell me what we got there. We got some good things going?
Oh, yes, we have lots of questions. Our first question is from Julie. She is saying, what do you mean by separate the people from the problem in the collaborative orientation?
That is a great question. So often when we are in negotiation, we equate the people that we're negotiating with as part of the tension and the issues that we're negotiating around. And so if we can actually realize this is just another person like me trying to figure things out, and put the actual issues, what we're negotiating around, as the problem, we can separate out, like, oh, they're just a person. We're just here together trying to figure this out. Let's not turn them into the villain. That's also part of what we're doing. Now, maybe some of their behaviors are frustrating. You may have to bring the process into it and say, hey, I'd love to get back on track and not be, whatever it is, the behavior they're doing, and more discussing this. Sometimes you have to bring that in, but that's generally what we mean by separate the people from the problem. I hope that's helpful.
All right. Patty is asking, as many of us might be on the job market, do you have advice regarding salary negotiation? Every screening call includes the question, how much do you want?
Yeah, I've seen and heard that before. It's getting a little frustrating. It used to be something you discuss during your conversation, and you can say things like, I want to be paid, in the range that's commensurate with my experience, or those kind of things. It's a little trickier nowadays when you actually have to sometimes fill out a drop-down box as to what I want the salary to be. My best advice is, number one, do your homework. Luckily, the laws are changing. There's a number of states now that actually put the negotiation ranges, the salary ranges out there for any salaries that are on the job. And I think Massachusetts is going to be catching up with that soon. So do your homework, know what the range actually is if it's posted. You can use salary.com. You can use some of the other websites if you Google, salary rates or ranges. And it will tell you, for your geography, for your job description, what is a fair rate. It gives you that range. So knowing that ahead of time can be helpful for you to be able to speak to what do I think is fair, and what do I think, I'm worth in this. And you'll have to figure out based on your skills or what you want to do. I always go higher target. Don't go on the low end of it if you can help it, because you want to set the anchor for your negotiation. But it is a little tricky when it's already sort of prescribed. I try to push back on the asking for, I think it's starting to become less legal or allowable to ask about salary history. So I would even shy away, because as we saw, there's already inequities. You don't want to start with what we used to get paid, because you're setting yourself up. So do your homework, know ahead of time, and utilize that as best you can to anchor the conversation around a solid, reasonable range.
All right. Catherine's saying, what techniques do you use when the other party approaches the negotiation in a purely transactional manner and will not engage in a collaborative process?
Ooh, that is tough. That is tricky. I think there's a couple things I think about. Number one, if it's really important for me to be collaborative, I can at least do my part in that and see if it helps me garner any additional information. It's hard to make someone act or do a certain way, but if I treat it and act in that way, sometimes modeling can help. Sometimes I actually explicitly will say, I'm thinking that it'll be more helpful for both of us to not leave value on the table if we are able to have an understanding of what's important to each of us. Or I find that our relationship, is an important aspect of this negotiation, as well as the transaction and what we're trying to get out of it. I think we're going to find ourselves in at the table again sometime, and it would be really important to me that we have a decent relationship so that we can have an easier time next time or whatever. Bringing things explicitly to the table can be a helpful way to do it. Sometimes you just have to act as if and do it, like I said, your way, and hope that they can jump on board. But yeah, I'm sure those are a couple to start, but I feel like I want to answer a few more questions here.
Yep, we have a few more.
Okay.
We have a question. Would you have a recommendation on online training for negotiation?
Well, not to do a personal plug, but there are some
Go
definite
for it.
ways that I can help you. So please reach out. Between working with an organization that I've done lots of work with over the years, we have an online module that one can buy that has a lot of these great tools and practices and skills. There's ways to do coaching. I just recently taught at Stanford continuing ed, so there's classes that you can take. I'm hoping to teach another one in the fall. So there's different ways that you can take it, but I'm certainly happy to share the resources I know, the ones personally, but as well as others that might be out there to meet your needs.
Great.
Yeah.
Another question we have is women and negotiation. I feel like women are often unfairly dinged when they negotiate at all. Do you
Yes.
have some advice for negating that?
Well, again, some of it is on you doing your homework so that you know what you're up against, doing all those things that I said that women don't do. Apparently, we also don't apply for jobs if we aren't 95% of the responsibilities that we feel like we can cover, and men apply for jobs with 40 or 50%. So just first and foremost, apply for the job, even if you don't have 100% of the skills listed as the responsibilities. But yes, I think, part of it is sort of doing your planning and preparation so you can feel as confident as possible when they are putting whatever it is out that you feel might be dinging you. I also can talk up the Innovation Women. I don't know if there's still access to last year's Bright Talk
There
link,
is.
but I did one, and I did a lot more that was very specific to women and negotiating, and other, groups that might want to learn better skills. So I think that's a great thing to look at to see about
All
a
right.
bunch of tips
And
there.
actually, when we send around the follow-up, we can share links to these. Heather, we did have somebody asking if it would be okay if we send around your link list of questions. 'Cause some people are on their phones and perhaps a little tiny.
Meaning, so I can answer after the fact, you mean? Or,
Your previous slide had a
oh,
terrific list.
yeah, feel free. Or if people want to take a screenshot, go for it.
All right. And, I think we have one more poll before people head
Yeah,
off.
so I'd love to get a sense now that you've had a very brief but hopefully rigorous understanding of some of the key stuff. Now, how well do you feel that you can negotiate? Again, putting those same ratings in play. Do you feel like you've gotten a few more things that you can put into your bag of tricks? Are you feeling a little better? Just love to get that temperature again of where things land.
Yeah, and actually when we did the poll the first time, we had, about a quarter people saying they were at a 5. We had a few people in the 9 and 8 area,
No
but
tens, I remember.
no
Yeah.
10s,
Yeah.
and, so,
And we
I don't
had ones and twos and even threes, and now we're up to 4 to 10. So way to go. Good. I'm glad some things sunk for you. Awesome.
yeah, and I know for a lot of people, anything like this is a starting point.
Yes, it is a lifelong journey. I wish I could say it is a nice silver bullet. But boy, I think just start practicing, just start trying things, just start being
Alright.
aware and preparing.
Yep. And as I said, we've actually now got a few people saying 10. So that's great to see. And we are all good. All right.
Excellent.
Any
Well,
last words of wisdom? Because it's 1 o'clock. I want to
one
send people
o'clock.
off.
I say go out there and do it. Feel free to stay in touch with me. I think you'll get my email. I'd love to hear more of your successes and your challenges, and just go and negotiate and do it with aplomb.
All
A
right.
smile on your face.
Thank you. Thank you again, Heather.
Thank you
And
for having
again,
me.
folks, we will be following up with a link to the recording and more information. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next month for Lioness uh, networking in celebration of International Women's Day. So we've got that
Excellent.
link once more in the chat for anybody who didn't grab it ahead of time. But we'll also send that around as well. Thank you, everyone. Take care
Thank
and have a
you
good
for being
day.
here.
Bye bye.
Bye.